So then are everyone expected?
Yeah, we are.
All right.
Right on time.
All right. Well, then I would like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Library Trustees for April 11th to order. The time is 6 p.m. And I'll invite Jinder to call the roll.
Trustee Ando,
Here.
Trustee Cortez,
Here.
Trustee Duke Hughes, Trustee Vadot,
Here.
Chair Lentini.
Here. Thank you, Jinder. And now I will invite Jinder to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Chair Lentini. This meeting tonight is being recorded and streamed live to Zoom, and members of the public can provide public comment by phone by calling 669-444-9171 using the meeting ID 834-4761-9302# and pressing *9 to raise your hand for comment. Or you can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda and use the raise hand feature through Zoom. If you experience technical difficulties, please email library@cityofsanrafael.org. You will have 3 minutes to provide your comments once unmuted. We are offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting on Zoom. Select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature.
Thank you, Jinder. I'd like to call our first item, which is approving the regular meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023 and February 14th, 2023. Are there any questions from trustees to staff on the minutes? All right, seeing none. So I would like to open this item for public comment. We do not have any in-person attendees. Jinder, is there anyone online? Thank you. So I will close public comment on this item. And so are there any comments on the meeting minutes from trustees? All right, then I request a motion for approving both sets of minutes.
I would move to approve both the January and February 2023 minutes as identified in the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Well, I'll second as the January minutes, but I wasn't here for the February meeting, so
I think it's fine. I don't think it matters, right?
No.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Jinder, would you call the roll for the vote?
Trustee Ando,
I
Trustee Cortez,
Hi.
Trustee Duke Hughes, Trustee Vadot,
I'll abstain.
Chair Lentini.
Aye. Thank you, Jinder. Approval of the minutes is passed. So before I jump to open time for the public and onto our next agenda item, I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate Jill on being selected as our permanent library and recreation director.
I was like happy to be here.
We are very glad to have you and excited that you have been selected for the position. I don't know if any other trustees would like to make any comments.
I already emailed Jill. Yeah, so really excited, I think, for us, the staff and the community. You just have done so much to grow it and make people feel welcome. I think.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right, then, Jinder, once again, I'd like to open this meeting for public comment. But we do not have any in-person attendees. Do we have any online attendees?
No online attendees.
All right, thank you. So moving on to our next agenda item, which is special presentations. And we have a presentation on cohesive display plan.
This is by Basha. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Sure, whenever. Oh, sure.
Yeah, I don't have to do that.
Okay, so this is a presentation on our cohesive display plan at the library. So some background on this display plan. I'm gonna minimize this so that it's a little more visible. Thank you. Visuals are a really big part of how we as the library communicate with our community, our patrons, and it's a big part of how we are literally seen by the community and the patrons. So the kinds of visual information that people will encounter in the library includes things like themed book displays, which is like what you see in the photo up there. As well as things like flyers or brochures. So flyers for library programs, flyers about different crafts and activities, and brochures detailing our services and our resources. We have 3 different locations, as you all know, and then we are also part of a consortium. So being visually identifiable as San Rafael is pretty important. We have a lot of patrons who go to a lot of different libraries within the county, and we want to make sure that patrons know that when they're at San Rafael, they're at San Rafael. So our goals for the visual information that patrons see when they walk into our libraries is for it to be accessible with simple, minimal text that is easy to understand, to be bilingual in English and Spanish to reflect our community needs, and to be uniform across all 3 of our locations. So the expectation is that when a patron walks into any of our 3 library locations, they can see information that's easy to understand, that is in English and in Spanish, and it's the same information no matter which branch they're going to. So you can walk into the downtown library and access all of the same information that you would if you go to Pickle or Northgate. And then so this is an example of the 3 display areas that we have at our 3 libraries. The left-hand one is downtown, Pickleweed in the middle, and then Northgate on the right-hand side. So we have all the same flyers, maybe arranged differently, but they're all the same flyers. They all have the same information. They all look the same at all of the 3 branches. If someone wants to learn about 3D printing and VR, then they can get that information at Pickleweed, downtown, and Northgate. Gender. So the way that we have implemented this is by sort of like a 3-pronged wheel of our design team, our translation team, and our programming team. And a lot of those people, it's the same person in each of these teams because we have very flexible working groups. And so, for example, when someone proposes a program, then they develop the program, they send the information to the design team so that we can make flyers, social media posts, get it on our events calendar, all of that stuff. And then we also reach out to the translation team so that they can make sure that it is translated in Spanish to those same specifications of accessibility and uniformity, making sure that it's easily understandable. And then that all sort of like comes back around to in one circle, like a feedback and anything that needs changes, anything that needs updating. And so all of the new materials that we've been making are being made according to these guidelines. So when you walk into the library today, you'll see stuff that is bilingual, that's accessible, that's easy to read, and you'll see the same information at all 3 of the branches. And then this is an example of something that we are working on to have at our outreach events. You can see that it's very simple. This one is actually pretty text heavy, but each block of text is relatively minimal. It's no longer than 2 sentences. The language is very simple. There's no jargon. There are visuals to help people identify what they're looking at, and it is bilingual. So this is going to be a sheet that we can hand out at outreach events. The recreation division is going to have a similar sheet, as well as childcare, I believe. And that's something that we'll be able to use when we're collaborating on outreach events and heading out to the community. Any comments or questions?
Well, I had no idea that you could use the same part anywhere in the county. I feel like I should have known that, but I had no
Yeah.
idea. Like, I don't have any comments, or I don't have any questions, but I would say that, I went in the library the other day, and I don't know if this counts as visual, but before, I guess that was pre-COVID, or I don't even remember when it was, but it's all blur. But before, going into the children's area, when we want to do 3D, it was kind of like you were doing it yourself and trying to figure it out, but you had someone there, like at a little table, and they were doing the VR and really made it simple and engaging to figure out what kind of 3D, and people were just like immediately coming up to that person. So I think it was great to just have that person right there, know exactly what they were doing, you know, and just streamline. So I thought that was really good. So thanks.
Trustee Ando, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Trustee Rod?
Yeah, just a quick question. First of all, appreciate how much time obviously goes into the design and implementation, obviously with the bilingual aspect. Has there been any thought, because I know San Rafael has a pretty sizable Vietnamese population, is there any thought to reach out to them as well? I know obviously with a little bit of trouble with the alphabet not being similar, but
Yeah, so ideally that would be, that would be ideal. We just happen to have more Spanish speaking staff than we do Vietnamese speaking staff. And so as the translation team is working on translations, it's easier for them to, have multiple people say, hey, is this the right way to say this? Would you say it this way? Spanish is also has a lot of regional differences. So that's why the team likes to course correct each other. As far as Vietnamese speaking staff goes, we only have one staff member, and it would be a lot of work to put on that one person to translate all of the materials that we have. But in the future, I would love to do that.
And I would also say Spanish is about 30% and Vietnamese, and based on census data is closer to like 3 to 5%. So we do have our policies translated into Vietnamese, which was thanks to Min, that was COVID work, but we, for our programs and stuff, we just don't have the bandwidth.
sure.
I should say in general, like when we're doing targeted outreach, because a lot of the Vietnamese community is concentrated in the canal neighborhood. So if we're doing like really outreach that is very specific to that neighborhood, we will try and do it in all three.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So then with that, I would like to open it to public comment. Again, we have no in-person attendees. Ginger, do we have any online attendees wishing to give public comment?
No online attendees.
All right, then I will close public comment on this item. And are there any additional comments from the board before I move on? Okay. So moving on to the next item. Number 3, review of increased demand for overdrive digital content, and that's by Jill.
Okay.
Sorry, 1 second. How should I clean up the sleep out of this?
Okay, alt tabbing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so. There we go. So this has been on the agenda for a few months, and now we finally get to present on it. I'm going to talk about overdrive digital content and the increased demand for that. Gosh, I can feel like we could stay. I'll stay for that. Okay, great. So this topic, this is a little bit of a dry presentation, but I think it's really interesting. So a little bit of background, Overdrive is a vendor that sells ebooks, e-audiobooks, and e-magazines to libraries for digital checkout. It's the largest vendor of digital materials to libraries. We share one catalog of Overdrive materials with all of the MarinNet consortium. Overdrive is the vendor, Libby is the application. So if any of you are ebook users, you probably have the Libby application on your phone. It's very user-friendly. Patrons can also check out ebooks and e-audiobooks on their browser. They can access them through their browser. So they can read in-app in Libby, they can read in the browser, or they can send them to their Kindle e-reader. And there are a few different lending models for how the ebooks or the digital content goes out. The most common one is similar to our physical items. It's the one copy, one user model. So every item, there's one copy of it. When it's checked out, it can check out to one user at a time, and there can be a holds list. We might purchase multiple copies of a popular item, but just like with the physical collection, if an item's really popular, there might be a long holds list. And I think a lot of times people are like, oh, it's digital. Why can't it go out to multiple people? And that just has to do with digital rights management and copyright. So this is a really interesting graph. So MarinNet has been tracking Overdrive checkout since 2013, and we have had a 622% increase in circulation. One note on all this data, the data shows the trends are consistent, but some of it is in fiscal year, except 2022 is in calendar year, so looks a little funky, but the trend is there. And the largest increase from one year to the next was from 2019 to 2020. And as you can imagine, has largely had to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. We were closed for in-person service from March to June of 2020. Then we had limited curbside service where patrons couldn't enter the building. And of course, a lot of people had concerns just about being out and about. So that big jump can be attributed to COVID-19, but as you can see, it has continued to go up since then. And between 2019 and 22, the overall growth has been 84.5%. And in terms of what's going out, adult fiction and adult nonfiction make up about 72% of circulation. And juvenile fiction is only 13% of all Overdrive circulation, but as you can see, it makes up about 44% of physical circulation. So as Larry had a really great question about this, children's materials are still largely being circulated physically and less so in terms of ebooks. In terms of format, so ebooks, e-audiobooks, and e-magazines, 50% are the ebooks, followed by 40% as e-audio, and 8% is magazines. And I will just shout out, if you have not checked out the Overdrive magazines, they are incredible. We have access to like thousands and thousands of popular titles. And unlike most of the ebooks, like 5 people could have the same magazine title checked out at the same time. And the experience is really similar to just reading a regular magazine. So that hasn't caught on quite as much, but I hope it will. I think it's a really cool feature. And then this, just getting into ebooks versus physical items. So this is a little wonky, but so because we share one Overdrive collection of materials, that has circulated, those materials of all of Marin Public Libraries have circulated 685,998 times of digital materials. San Rafael, based on a number of factors, our formula, our percentage share is about 16.69%. So we can roughly attribute about 114,493 of those checkouts to San Rafael residents, as opposed to in 2022, our physical items circulated about a little more than double that, so 261,092 times. So still, our physical items are circulating quite a bit more. However, as we're seeing those huge increases with the ebooks, circulation of physical materials has decreased by 13% since 2019. So it's still quite a bit more, but it is going down. And here's just additional numbers on that. Between 2019 and 2022, we've had an increase of overdrive materials by 52,488 checkouts. And between 2019 and 2022, we've had a decrease of physical item checkouts by 41,176. And in terms of funding, so our overdrive collection budget comes to us in two streams. We have our large Marin net budget that we all pay our percentage share of. Ours is 16.69%. And a portion of that budget goes to just ebooks, to overdrive content. And then in addition to that, member libraries are not required to, but we all do supplement with additional funds. So out of the Marin net budget last year, we devoted $276,929 to overdrive, and then member libraries supplemented an additional, we about doubled that for a total of $545,981 combined for our shared overdrive budget for 2022. And in terms of San Rafael, we spent $26,500 on overdrive materials was our supplemental amount, in addition to the share that's taken out of our overall paycheck or bill that we give to MarinNet. We also purchase Hoopla and Canopy, which are additional e-resources. Hoopla, you can stream media, you can download ebooks, and Canopy is for streaming films. Slightly different lending models. And then for our physical budget, we spent $208,000 on physical materials. So we're still devoting quite a big chunk of money towards physical items and less towards ebooks. So just with all of that in mind, we're just thinking about, as the growing demand for ebooks and e-audiobooks and e-magazines increases, just moving forward in future years, we're considering, do we want to put more money towards those and take a little bit less money or a little money out of our physical item budget? Of course, we'd still devote quite a bit of money towards children's materials, as that continues to be largely favor physical items. And then in addition to that, there's a project called initiative called the Palace Project, which is a collaboration between the California State Library and a nonprofit called Lyrasis that supports libraries and cultural institutions. And that takes basically all of the public libraries in the state, and there is a shared base of ebooks. So if you can think about rural libraries that don't have the same budget that we might, it kind of like creates the same floor for access to ebooks. And it also, it's a nonprofit, so we're not putting money towards we wouldn't be putting money towards Overdrive, which is a for-profit. And together, all of the public libraries have a little bit more power to negotiate prices, whereas with singularly, we don't as much, and overdrive books tend to be very expensive. The Palace Project is an app where you can read your ebooks right in the app, but it's not as slick as Libby, and yeah, but it's in development. So that is another consideration if we want to put funds towards something other than overdrive. Any comments and or questions? Larry, you sent me some good ones.
Yes, so first, thank you for pulling the information on it's kind of second order around who is checking out the physical books, because well, my experience is, and again, you mentioned it, that for kids, I think it's really important, or at least my experience has been, that to engage kids to read at an early age, to have that physical book in front of them. I'm at San Pedro School, as you may know, and I volunteer there, and to have those books available to them, to see them look at it and realize that's something they can access. And then the other question was, or the other comment was, as a senior in this community, I know that I have I have an ability to understand Kindle and how to use ebooks, but there may be some older adults that do not. And so if we're going to cut back on the physical books, then to help older folks make sure that they can make that transition into e-reader type books, then that would be my second comment. So, and I think I talked to you or emailed to you that before, but those are my two comments. But I support I mean, the numbers say, right,
Yeah.
that we're not, that people aren't accessing the physical books as much. So yeah,
Well, they are. I mean, they're still considerably accessing physical items more than ebooks, and I think our budget would continue to reflect that. And then it's just like, we just need to find money to also put towards ebooks. And to your point, I think that's a really good point about older adults and that sort of digital divide. And one thing that is cool about ebooks, which is for vision impaired folks, which often tends to impact older adults, there are like more accessibility features. In terms of technology, we have drop-in tech support, so folks can come to the library a teenager can sit down with them and really show them how to download those items. William, one of our librarians, has been doing outreach to Vivalon to show them how to use all of our digital resources. So I think continued outreach like that would be needed.
I'll just say it's not just older adults. My wife, who's in her 30s, steadfastly refuses to use ebooks. So whenever we go on a trip, it's one extra bag for all the documents. Another point I just wanted to, because you mentioned digital rights management, if anyone wants to nerd out about that, Planet Money from NPR actually did a really good podcast about it. Which, because I used Libby at the beginning of the pandemic and I was, why is it taking me 3 months to get this book?
Yeah.
And they did a really good series. My only comment about this presentation is I think, I appreciate everything you guys are doing, but, there are some like wide fluctuations between 2019 and 2022, obviously because of the pandemic, but, even from 2021 to 2022, and I understand it's not apples to oranges because 2021 was fiscal year, 2022 was calendar year. But I mean, you're seeing like an 80,000 jump in the physical distribution. And my only comment would be, letting it maybe normalize another year or two to see really where do these, how are physical items being circulated? Because obviously, yes, you have the decline from the pandemic, but you're also seeing these wide fluctuations that are coming back.
And just between FY19 and FY22, there's just a huge jump in circulation overall.
Yeah.
Right. So,
So just to go to add to that, is there a reason why you went from fiscal year to calendar year, and is there
The data was presented
Oh, okay.
because we submit data by fiscal year,
Yeah,
and then for
that's-
whatever reason, MarinNet took calendar year data, but it still shows the trend. It's just
right? Is this just to show a point in time, or will they now be moving on to calendar? Will this all be calendar year?
Don't think so.
So calendar year was the overdrive data, which was pulled by staff at MarinNet. We always do fiscal year. We
Right.
submit data to the state library every year.
But the previous overdrive year, okay, fiscal year.
Yeah, I don't know, some fluky thing that happened, so.
Well, fiscal year 22 isn't over yet,
Right.
so it would be fiscal year to date.
23.
Yeah, we're
Are we officially?
we're in 23.
22, 23.
22, 23.
Yeah, but this is from 21, 22. is
Oh,
what
it's
we're
21,
looking-
22, okay.
Yeah.
I just had a question about, or Danny mentioned, you talked about the Palace project. So as you're weighing pros and cons, like how are you gonna run a small pilot? Like, how are you evaluating?
Yeah, sorry, the presentation went on long, so I didn't want to drone on about it. But the Palace Project is a really cool app. It is, like I said, developed by State Library and Lyrasis. We have access to it now. We're one of the first libraries to be using it. The state put $2 million towards this eBooks for All campaign, so you can access. They purchased all of these books, and anyone in the state can read them. The other cool thing about the Palace Project is it combines all of our digital collections in one place. So Overdrive is available in the Palace app, but you have to read everything in the app, and the search functionality is not as good as Libby, and you can't send your items to Kindle. So you have to read them in the app. But I did ask Overdrive to pull some data, and it was about 60% of users read in the Libby app and about 40% send to their Kindle. So that's 60% of people who could go over to the Palace Project app. We're promoting it right now. We're not putting any money towards the Palace Project at this time, but we're going to continue to pull stats and see if it is popular, if it does catch on. Bosch has been doing a lot of really great promotion through our email campaigns, and we're also training patrons on how to use it. And if it takes off, we could put money into it. If it flops, then we won't have
Okay.
wasted any money.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thanks.
And then if I could just add the eBooks for All initiative that Jill had mentioned, the sort of like shared California state collection. That $2 million is actually ARPA funding. So because ARPA funding had some really specific stipulations on how it was to be used and spent down, the Palace Project and the Digital Public Libraries of America used that to bargain with the publishers in order to get lending models that would work for the ARPA funding stipulation, and were also a lot more equitable than what you get through like Overdrive and other similar like platforms with funding models like that. And that was a really that was honestly like a really big show of power and kind of a show of like what we can do working with nonprofits like this to help change the landscape of the digital rights management in a way that would suit communities, patrons, and libraries a lot better.
And I think when we think about library services, like obviously all of our, like we're a local public library and we have different needs than other libraries, but I think that ebooks are one area, especially because when we think about how these trends are increasing, like our funding isn't necessarily increasing, and what does that mean for us? And I think if we kind of combine our power and sort of change this kind of like landscape where we're all just like throwing money into the never-ending maw that is like Overdrive, like as a state, then we can, you know, perhaps like use our power more effectively as a in numbers.
Any other questions? And again, I want to open this to public comment, but there are no in-person attendees. Ginger, do we have any online attendees wishing to comment? Okay, are there any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Really quickly, was there like a timeline to, may have mentioned this to judge the Lyrasis project, or project?
So we piloted it, I don't know, how many months ago is that?
I think it was in February, end of February.
We only started really promoting it then, so we'll look at that up until, you know, we're coming up on the end of fiscal year 23 in June. And what we normally do then is we just take whatever collection budget and digital resource budget we have left over and just throw it towards Overdrive. So we'll do that again this year, but then next year, when we're coming up on like the end of fiscal year 24, we can evaluate what the Palace Project numbers look like and think about, do we want to give all our money to Overdrive or perhaps put some towards Palace Project?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next item. Item 4 is rescheduling the May 9th, 2023 board meeting. Is there any sort of staff background on this one?
Thanks, Bonnie.
Do you wanna go?
Thank
or
you,
you want
Tasha.
to?
Oh, sure. So I have there's a staff report, a very interesting staff report in your packet that I wrote. So we have 3 vacancies coming up at the end of April. Cheryl and Brianna, unfortunately, are not going up for reappointment. And Larry, you are in term 0, is that correct?
I'm not quite sure because I'm filling out an existing term, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's one or so.
So we
You're
have
at 0. So if you're reappointed, that'll be then your first full term, so.
So we'll have, we have, 3 vacancies, and then the city council has scheduled a special meeting to have interviews on May 9th, which is what we had scheduled our board meeting for. And yeah, it would be great. So your options are, we could reschedule for another Tuesday in May, or we could cancel, because we won't be able to have a quorum if we don't have, if we're missing 3 members. One context for why it would be really great if we could reschedule is our architects, Nolan Tam, who are working on our $3 million modernization project. They have some plans that they will be available, have to share with you all, and we really want to get board feedback. And as we move into June, it starts to get a little bit too late for that. So if we could reschedule to one of these days, that would give you all time to review those plans and provide feedback. And so our options are Tuesday, May 16th, they're all Tuesdays, May 23rd or May 30th, or to cancel. And
You're
this is-
interviewing them on May 9th. When's the decision made?
It's made that same.
Oh, it is. I
Yeah.
don't even remember.
They're done pretty. Because it's actually a public meeting, so the decisions are made in public at that.
Oh, that was different than it was. I did it. Kind of
Come on,
changed.
that's how it
Oh,
It was during COVID, so it was weird, but that's how it was.
really?
Yes, yeah.
And when they're done in person or pre-pandemic, they probably were public meetings, but. People didn't. So typically it's on.
We were like a small room downstairs.
Yeah, and the door would have been slightly ajar, and if someone had wanted to walk in and sit on them, they could have.
People are busting down the door to get into these meetings.
Yeah.
Just in terms of scheduling, only thing, it's the 16th and 23rd. will be childcare. September.
30th is also the Tuesday after Memorial Day.
Which day is that?
Tuesday, the 30th is the day after. So I can do the 16th.
I can do this. I can do the 16th or the 30th, 23rd. And flying back into the country.
Softly presumptuous of you, Larry.
Yeah.
I might be able to. Looks like I get in. No, I can make the 23rd. I get in before noon.
Is your preference the 16th, Larry?
I have a
Okay.
preference.
Then June between those.
I don't have, just what's on the agenda for May? What's on the work plan for May?
May,
I'm just wondering if we just cancel versus what's on the.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which is why we're hoping. Because if we push it to June, it's just the
Yeah.
deadlines with the grants, it just kind of.
No preference, whatever works.
And it really should be what everyone else can do, since there's no guarantee that I will be reappointed. So
Well,
Offer is continuing on.
yeah. So the 30th is out, and then whoever has the preference can.
You too?
No, I don't.
I'll move to reschedule the meeting to Tuesday, the 16th.
And then.
I'll
is there-
second.
Okay, do we want to, do we call roll on it? Okay, Jinder, could you call the roll for the vote?
Was there a second motion?
That was me.
Oh,
Cortez.
okay. All right, got it. Okay, trustee Endo,
I'm
trustee Cortez,
Aye.
trustee Duque, trustee Vedot,
Aye.
chair Lentini.
So motion passes for May 16th as the rescheduled meeting. Thank you.
Wait, were
Okay,
you like chair for like
I know,
Two
like, what,
meetings?
2 meetings? I mean, I
Yeah,
feel
well,
gypped.
That will also be on the agenda in May.
Do we need to appoint a chair?
Vice chair.
Oh,
Shooting up to power.
right. Rocket into the top.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, most of the city clerk, I mean, I would think perhaps you would become chair and then we would need to select.
And
a
Jane's
vice.
already been chair.
I've been like
Vice
vice chair,
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 chair.
and then
Yeah.
Is this
then
gonna
we'll
be
have
your last term?
new members as well. Yeah, we'll check on,
well, our role usually is just to discuss, like, we have our system, right, which is like whoever's in line. Do we make it, do we vote on it? I can't remember. Do we always do a vote?
yeah.
We
can
do?
add to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
but we did develop.
Yeah.
yeah,
in order.
kind of tenure.
Yeah.
So everyone gets a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when
I
are
was a
you
little surprised
out?
it's already.
Are you out?
I probably will not be at the May 16th.
Okay, that's what I assumed. Yeah.
Yeah, my due date's May 9th.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
congratulations.
And when are you on mat leave until?
When the contractions start.
But are you out for 4 months? You don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and work to the end so I can.
Yeah. Will Jill just be taking the lead role or will you have an?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jill, we have 2 assistant directors. Jill will be leading over the library side and our other assistant director will be leading over the.
Got it.
All right.
There's stuff. Okay, I have that in my note, so we'll let Lindsay know.
Moving on to item 5, other brief program updates or reports on any meetings, conferences, and or seminars attended by staff.
So we changed up the agenda order a little bit. We realized we were slightly out of sync with what the other boards and commission template, so. We just went ahead and changed it. It's not much difference. But, do you want me to go? Do you want to go?
You can go first.
So I think the big one is obviously the downtown library modernization project is moving along. We've been meeting weekly with Nolan Tan. They're putting together some exciting plans. I think the next big step that we need to look at before we come to present anything publicly is the cost, so we can understand what can we actually afford. So we're still waiting on that, but they're working on that. They're doing a lot of scoping. And also looking at some of the basic items like the roof and the HVAC and ADA, but then also hopefully some more items that are gonna be just making it a little bit nicer place. At the same time, do you want to share about the foundation? or-
Yeah, I can share.
Okay, then we'll wait for the commissioner report. So
Yeah.
Cheryl's got some exciting news about kind of the bigger picture project for looking at a new or expanded library. We all recognize that this $3 million project is just kind of a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Where really there is a need for a bigger, older project. So that there's some exciting things coming down the pipe on that as well. Including that the city will be doing some polling to gauge community or voter support really for a potential parcel tax for 2024 to support that. So we are still trying to figure out how to fund this and looking at all different options. I think those are.
You want to talk about the Marin meeting that you went to?
Oh, yeah, so the Marin, we had on our work plan at some point to kind of give a presentation on updates around MarinNet structure. That's being pushed a bit. There was a key staff, there's only 4 MarinNet staff, 5. It's not a very large staff.
4 and well, there's a vacancy right
Yeah,
now.
and there's a vacancy in kind of their top lead position. So they're using that opportunity to do a staffing evaluation to see if they have the right structure, if they've got kind of the right roles and responsibilities. And we've put out a RFP for a consultant to come in and kind of do that staffing analysis and also to take a look at the JPA. The JPA was last updated in 1997, so some things have changed, and I think with just the number
Sorry, what is-
member agencies in the
It's like the
consortium.
agreement, like a.
joint-
an
Oh, it's
MOU.
the agreement that kind of.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, runs the consortium. It's hard to get consensus, and I think the JPA requires consensus for any changes. So it's been a bit stalled, so we'd also like the consultants to take a look at the JPA and give some ideas there. Unfortunately, we did not get any submissions for the RFP. So we're increasing the budget for it and going back out. We kind of got feedback that it was an unrealistic scope given the budget amount. So hopefully in the next month, that should be released this week. And hopefully we'll get some more interest this time around.
Question, again, because I'm fairly new to this, in terms of the JPA, are there? Like what jurisdictions are part of it, or maybe the better way, what jurisdictions are not part of it in Marin?
I think
Is
all
everybody-
It's all
libraries-
Marin Public Libraries, so that's, the largest one is Marin County Free Libraries, which is made up of. I don't know exactly how many branches, but Civic
everybody-
Center, Novato.
Everybody's in.
Yeah, and then,
Dominican and.
yeah, and then there's a number of city libraries. We're the only city library that has multiple branches, but there's Beltip, San Anselmo, Sausalito. Yeah.
Any other questions on the staff report?
Did you?
Oh, I have a couple small things. One is that we had an all-staff training from Chris Hess, who is the Assistant Director of Community Development, and his whole purview is homelessness in San Rafael. So he did a really great training for all library staff about all of the services available for people experiencing homelessness in San Rafael and how they all work together as like a coordinated effort. And that was really interesting. Obviously, one of our large patron bases is people experiencing homelessness. So that was helpful to learn about. One thing that's really interesting about that is they have a coordinated system of entry. So everyone who is on the street is identified by one organization, and then they do a survey. That person is given a vulnerability score, and then that's how they prioritize getting either temporary or permanent supportive housing for people. And the vulnerability score is really based on who's most likely to die on the street. So it's nice that it's not just like individual agencies like finding people, they're all working together, and the city is a part of that as well. And in addition to that, all of our staff are doing the Librarian's Guide to Homelessness. It's an online training. It's about 4 hours, and it offers really just like an overview of how homelessness, like what is chronic homelessness, like dispelling myths. It's very like trauma informed, and it just like is really good about teaching library staff best practices for engaging with that population, de-escalation, and supporting folks who are vulnerable in that way. And in addition to that, I don't know if you all are aware, but the city just went live with this thing called the SAFE Alternative Response Team, which is a team of 2 folks. It's an EMT and not an official social worker, but someone who is trained in that way. And so people can call either regular dispatch, or they can call 458 SAFE, and that will get them for incidents that are not violent in nature. So if someone's having a mental health crisis or whatever it might be, then they can send people out to address that. So without going straight towards police or fire.
Is that a county or city?
It's city.
City.
So we partnered with a nonprofit that's based out of Petaluma. It is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 24/7. That's what our grant funding, the city's grant funding allows. And they're based in the police. They're in the police department, but they're not, police officers. And yeah, that's live now. So they've already been getting quite a bit of calls. they came in toward the library.
So with that training that you've gotten and you're continuing to get and all of those things happening around people experiencing homelessness, I'm just wondering, like, you know, being the library, I know there are a lot of myths and there is a lot of, you know, anxiety and, you know, among the public, you know, when they see homeless around or, you know, being nervous that, you know, they don't want to be in that area or I'm just wondering, are you thinking about ways that the library can hold programming that based on kind of what you're learning and, you know, to like basically just tell our community, you know, some of these things that you've learned and just how to kind of, I mean, I think that that's an issue. I mean, that comes up all the
Yeah.
time, you know, and I just wonder if that's an avenue, that's something that the library could offer as a program for people who want to learn, you know, people that both want to learn what can they do to help, and also people that, you know, just don't want to deal, don't like it, want it to go away, to just
Right.
maybe, you know, if they could know more about how not to be afraid.
Yeah, no, there is definitely, you know, tension. That's something that
Mhm.
comes up for library staff quite a bit, is both like, this is a population that are like super users of our library, and there's a lot of folks that are uncomfortable by
Yep.
homelessness, and that sort of like coexisting. Sometimes there's tension around that, and I haven't thought about a program like that, but that's not a bad idea.
Any other comments or questions on staff reports?
That's everything for me.
Excuse me, Chair Lentini.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, if you can please switch the script for items 5 and 6. I made a mistake there.
Oh, okay, so open to public comment now? And that would be then, if I'm switching the script, then I would open the public comment to in-person attendees, of which we still have none. Are there
No
any online
attendees either.
attendees?
Yeah.
No online either?
No.
Okay. Okay, so then moving on to item 6, which is our commissioner reports.
Wait, didn't you, oh, is that your report? Okay.
Yeah, you're done staff
Yeah.
report. Okay, so opening, close, public comment. And then moving on now to the next item, which is commissioner reports. So opening up to the board for any brief reports on meetings, conferences, or seminars attended by the board. Does any of you have any? Okay, so then I can report out on what the foundation has been doing. So I think with all the, you know, kind of attempts to, you know, continue to move forward on the new library project. One of the things that the foundation board discussed was, you know, the idea that in some of the recent surveys, it's just, you know, what can we do to educate the public about the need for a new library? You know, there's perhaps a lot of misperceptions, you know, that it's not really needed. Why do we want that? The library's fine. So the foundation commissioned a film production and hired a company that, you know, worked with Jill, worked with Catherine, interviewed a number of patrons, you know, filmed the existing library, filmed the Hayward Library as an example of a new modern library, and put together this pretty amazing film to basically just kind of showcase, you know, the need, the why, you know, what does a 21st century library look like? And that final cut is ready for the foundation board to review at our meeting this week. And then we've also reached out to Charles Heath, who is he's a consultant that specializes in kind of like, you know, sort of publicizing and, you know, kind of like getting word out on whatever, you know, kind of a campaign, a publicity campaign. And so we are looking to probably bring him on then to actually like disseminate this film over the next several weeks before the next survey takes place, to see if we can move the needle, to see, you know, what we can do to just kind of get word out, help people understand the need better, and see if it makes any difference in the polling. Before, you know, again, the next set of decision making on the part of the council as to whether to go out for any more measures comes up. Because that's all, there's a pretty set timeline to kind of get these things moving and make this decision if anything wants to be on the 2024 ballot. And there are different mechanisms we've discussed. So this is that next step that the foundation board took to see if we can affect this process anymore again. So that's where we are. So it's pretty exciting, film's pretty cool, and, I think after Friday's meeting, we would be planning to release it, begin releasing it publicly, and so then, I think the board would also have the chance to be viewing it.
Do we think we want to have that as an agenda item in the May meeting?
Might be a little late. Because that's about the time that will be going out for the poll.
Yeah, I mean, I think
So we,
maybe,
but we can share it.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking is maybe it's something
Yeah.
that's shared directly with the board as soon as it's released, that you guys can view it.
It's very slick. They did a great job.
They did a great. Yeah, I mean, it was funny because we got to see like the first cut. And, oh man, and they're like, no, don't worry, this is that, you're way nicer than, our corporate clients, because we're just like, oh my, everybody's like comments, and I mean, really like, passionate comments. This is not, this is not the message you want to get, so. But the final cut is just, it's really, I mean, I think it's gonna be, it'll be really successful. I think it really came together well. So, fingers crossed. But I think that's all I had to bring to. Any other items? Commissioners? And then Ginger, do I need to ask for public comment on this item as well? Okay. So I think with that, if there are no other items, then we can adjourn tonight's meeting. So the time is,
And I do want to just thank Cheryl
you, Cheryl.
and Adriana.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adriana.
You guys have been really great.
yeah, I was a little surprised my term was up. I just it's kind of abrupt, but I mean,
Four, you only did them.
yeah,
Yeah.
Didn't get to
really
that.
chair.
Well, you did a great job.
There's a good script. That's the only
Yeah.
thing possible. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure serving with all of you, and I just really appreciate it. Like, I know we've had turnover on the board, but I think this has been a great group of people. to serve.